get started with our last session of the day, but before we do that, and many of you will probably recognize this person in the program as somebody that you recognize. How many of you have actually seen Gerald Vetter present before? Raise a hand. That is spectacular. And the reason I ask is because we have had Gerald come present at our conference many, many times. And for those of you that know him, and I've gotten the chance to get to know Gerald a little bit over the last several years here, and through our organization, and seen him present countless times. And each time he does, he brings something new, he brings something practical. But I think what he brings best is the inspiration that teachers need. It's hard to leave one of his presentations not thinking to yourself, man, we have a great profession. And that's why we always ask him to kind of close out the day for us when we ask him to come back, is because we know that that's kind of what we need at the end of the day, is that uplifting kind of feeling that, hey, this is a great job. And Gerald brings that every time he presents. And with that, I actually am going to tell you that we're going a little bit out of schedule today. Tomorrow is our awards presentation. But because we have a special award to give today, I need to recognize Gerald Vetter. The board has recently decided that because of his many contributions to our organization, Gerald Vetter is going to be awarded the Distinguished Service Award by the North Dakota Council of Teachers of English for his many contributions to our organization. So with that, I guess he's going to probably spend the first few minutes staring at his plaque.
That's right. I can't wait.
Acceptance speech first.
This is a great honor. This really is. I can't wait to go back to my 30th class reunion. Show off a little bit. This will be awesome. So, do I need a mic up? Yes. I have a story to begin with. I'll put this on first. I'm wearing can you hear that now? Test. How's that? Is that working? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Because I'm going to break out in song later. It'd be really good you hear me, because you're going to sing along. I showed up I was kind of getting ready to leave today, and I had a few things to get ready. And I came back from the grocery store carrying a bouquet of flowers, and which I want to use today. And as I was walking down the hallway, our secretary said, there's a new family here from New York, and they want to sign up. And they're standing in the hallway. And the family said, this is the first time we've ever been greeted at a new school with flowers. I think we'll sign. So I didn't have the heart to tell them that wasn't what it wasn't. So I gave them the bouquet of flowers. It was $5.99. So I went back and got another bouquet. I think we're going to get them because of that. How simple is that, huh? You know, you give a few flowers and they sign up. I'm also wearing a St. Mary's tie today. That way I can write off. Saying it's a full day of school, so thank you very much. I pulled out at about 2:10, but I'm counting it as a full day because I'll be representing the school to some extent. I guess a little bit about me. I've been at St. Mary's Central High School for far too long. I think I'm on to my 22nd year in about 6-7 different capacities, from a religion teacher to a social studies teacher, a basketball coach, part-time administrator, sometimes a janitor, sometimes counselor, things like that. And this is my first year that I'm entering the complete, total dark side of education. This year I'll be a full-time administrator. So I've purchased the evil toolkit. I'm ready to go. And I assured Aaron that it's all downhill from here. So, but as I'm holding flowers, I was invited to a couple weddings in June. And one of the pastors pulled out the bouquet and said, do you know why we have bouquets for weddings? And this is a two-part thing. So as you're thinking about why bouquets, I would also like maybe someone who would like to do a little reading. Did you find someone maybe, or no one? Maybe there'll be a volunteer?
We'll get a volunteer.
I'll need a volunteer to do a little reading for me. But then you can go home like the family from New York with a bouquet of flowers. Any ideas? Fertility. Good guess. But that's not what the pastor said. Nurturing, love, forgiveness, fragrance. A deodorizer. June, the flowers were in bloom. You took them to the church or you took them to the community, and at least the bride would smell good, and people would gather around and probably would not smell her odor. But the same is true for what they would decorate with. So some practical things, and these are some things that make us feel kind of at home. And these also remind me a great deal of my mother and my grandmother, who had very, very, very nice flowers growing out in the front. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about a voyage, okay? Probably a voyage that we're all going to embark on in about a month from now. And it's called the first day of school. And there'll be students there who may be riding on this boat for the very first time with you. There'll be some other teachers there's some other students who will be very, very excited because school's been really easy for them. And they're excited. So we'll kind of call them the chosen ones, right? The ones that are really, really easy to teach. Then there's going to be those that have had, as I will call, casualty along the way. School has not been easy. It has not been a pleasant place for them to be. And somehow, some way, as educators, and I'm still in your boat, because I'm still a teacher, and I need to keep teaching, and now I work with the staff more than I will students. But some way, it is our job to repair those psyches, because they're not all going to love literature, right? They're all not going to love math. And the truth is, some of them aren't going to love us to begin with. Maybe because they've been damaged along the way. So this summer, I was removing rust from an old metal bed. And I was working on it for about 3 days. And it dawned on me, I think that's kind of what the first couple days of school are about. I know that we have to work with our, the golden children. But I really think the first couple days of education need to be about those students who don't want to be there. And we need to brush off that rust. And we need to create some beauty in our discipline so that they feel that they are a part of it, that they're interested in, and that they want to come back tomorrow for just a little bit more. So after I took off all the rust, my wife took a couple cans of $4.99 paint, and she painted it white. And that is the second side of how I think our students ought to look at our class 21 days in. That they can see a little reflection of themselves in the discipline that you teach. That they can feel the outside of it and it can feel smooth. It's not rough. And a bed for us should be a haven that we lay our heads at night and feel calm, relaxed, and some sense of rest when we wake in the morning. So I'm not here today for you guys. I'm not here today for me. I'm here today for your students. And if there's something I can do that can make your life just a little bit easier, it's really for them, because my job and your job is to brush off a little of that rust, get them on your voyage, and take them to some very, very exciting places, and that they can feel safe. My grandmother loved flowers. She grew flowers. And there were flowers on the boat that she rode on to the new country as they left Russia. The last words she heard from her grandmother and grandfather were this: "We will see you again one day in heaven. It's just too bad your mom and dad are taking you away from us." And they did not say goodbye to their own children, only to the grandchildren. They were so disappointed. My grandmother was 5. My grandmother was afraid of one thing more than anything, and that was water. She had a little brother who was buried at sea. He got sick. And when we would play out around this little creek behind our house, she'd freak out. She saw water. She was afraid. We dipped our toe in it. She got us out. She was damaged to some extent along the way. The only water that she liked was holy water. You know, she'd sprinkle on it us before storms and stuff like that. And there was one other thing that I think brought her comfort other than the holy water, and that was flowers. Because behind the body of her little brother, they tossed flowers. I can't imagine what it would have been like coming to the new country, being afraid, not knowing where you're going to end up, and then you experience death, and now you're about 21 days into it or 17 days into it, and you're not feeling so great. And then there were the people that they never met before. The people that might have made them feel a little uncomfortable. That is going to be you and I in about 24 days. The people they probably haven't been around before, and those people that are going to make them feel a little uncomfortable, and the people who are going to be calling the shots and doing things onto them. And there'll be new students. It'll be kind of scary for some of our students. And I remember a story that I read, and it always reminded me of my grandmother, that there was this family that when they got on the ship to come to their home country, to come to the new country, they couldn't read or write. And they didn't know what to expect. And they couldn't read, any of the directions, so to speak. They didn't know that there was food on board. So they packed all their own food. Cheese, pickled things, flatbreads. And they sat in the corner of that ship for several days, not communicating with anybody else. Because they're afraid. Maybe because they've been damaged, or because someone said, it's dangerous out there, don't go there. Those are the students you will recognize in the first 15 minutes, first 5 seconds of class. You'll look at their eyes and you'll be like, yeah, there they are. Day 3, day 4, day 5 of the voyage, someone tried to call them and take them to the food, and they did not want to go. And they'd call them, and they would not come to food. And day 6, they would not come to food. And finally, one of the little 5-year-old children said, let's go. They're like, why? And he said, I think there's something there. And this 5-year-old, brought the family to the food center. And they ate. And for 6, 7, 8 days, they didn't even know it existed. So I guess my question to you is this. How will you and how will I call those students out of what they're afraid of and into our discipline? I think you already know how to do it. It's just being cognizant of the fact that they're there and recognizing them. Because I was that student. And in every one of my sheets, I write the name of Bryce Zeman, who in 6th grade called me out of my scared little corner, and the only time I really got attention is if I was misbehaving, with my pretty solid D average in school, a kid who failed the fourth quarter of U.S. history in the 5th grade, and he simply said to me, I think you and I are going to get along well. I was like, I said, because when I called out people's name for their seating chart, you did not roll your eyes. That's all I did. I've told Mr. Zeman several times that he saved my life. And for 3 years I was in his classroom. And by about day 5 in the 6th grade, I knew I wasn't a good student, but I knew I wanted to teach. And it wasn't so much the discipline, but I understood the power of the profession that you and you and you and I have by being able to call people to something greater, and if for nothing else, to make them feel safe. But the best thing, he made me realize that I was part of history. And he allowed us to share our stories about our families and my grandmother and her fears. So if nothing else, call those people forward. But before you can call them forward, you need to seek them out. And I really think that's who the first 4 and 5 days of school are about. You can lay out the syllabuses for a few days. I always loved showing up to college, first college class, and I read the syllabus for the first 20, 25 minutes, and it was so engaging. And you remember my high school teacher who gave us all these, 15, 20 rules, which we knew weren't going to be followed because they read the same rules the year before in world history. And that wasn't going to change in U.S. history. Get them engaged right away. Get them engaged in the discipline, call them forward, and make them see that your discipline is beautiful. Because it really is. All right, let's get up. Would you all please grab hold of this rope? Would you start? I'll have you walk back to that tree back there, go around the outside. And if everyone could just grab hold of this. There you go. This is not a trust activity or anything like that. Grab hold of the rope. And if I could have your end, if you could come this way, please. Thank you. On 3, we begin. No, I'm just kidding. No, we will not pull. All right. Yeah, we'll come this way. Good. Awesome. Good. Good. All right. I did this about a year ago with the graduates of Dickinson High School. And they did better than you did. But anyway, it was really, really fast. Like, rope, yeah! All right. Is anyone who could make a guess as the distance from the rope to that side to that side? How many feet? 100 feet? 50 feet? 75. Your first guess was perfect. It's 100 feet. And by the way, that is the suspected life expectancy of the students that we'll be teaching this year, if things continue to go the way they are. And what I always like to do with students is this. I like to count 18, or about 14. And I want you to imagine this. You four folks right here, stand up on a chair. Starting with you. Yes, that's right. Stand up on a chair. I'm going to call you out of your fear. I'll call you. And then here you go. There you go. Yes, please. You can do it! As Bella Caroli said once in the Olympics. Remember poor Carrie Struggs? She fell forward. Bella, you can do it, Caddy! You can do it! It was so awesome. I was crying and stuff, and he's sweating. He's got pits all over the place. And she does it. 100 years of your life. This is high school. Look how brief that moment is. 1, 2, 3, 4. And think about how those 4 years will set the table for the rest of their lives. Because somewhere over here, it's college, 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe 2, or maybe 1, or maybe it's military. And the decisions here and here will have an impact on possibly the big decisions we make. Marriage, children, profession, all those things. You don't think these 4 years are important to them socially? Imagine how important those 4 years are to them educationally. That is so short. Now, I'm a little scared because if I looked in this continuum and I want to look at my life in the continuum of here, I'm half done. That's assuming I can avoid, things. I sat through a talk the other day that said this, that people in my age group, a guy with my past health and things like that, that there's about a 60% chance, that I will have cancer. That's uplifting, isn't it? And at the end of the talk, he asked us, how many of you think you will one day get cancer? And none of us raised our hands. Because it's not happening to me. Why? Because I'm arrogant. And that would mean I'd have to stop eating the foods I'm eating, I'd have to glove up appropriately when I spray my lawn and stuff like that, Because for some reason, those chemicals aren't going to do anything to my cells. But I'm half done. And as the show Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying, right? And I have a few things left on my another show, bucket list, of things that I need to do or want to do. Because when I'm over here, chances are I may not be healthy enough to go back and visit the home country of my grandmother. Just thinking. Okay? I'm very, very, very happy that there were some people during my high school years that really cared about me, that told me I could do something with myself, that encouraged me, and those will be you folks in a couple of weeks. All right? I guess that rope is also indicative of something else. Imagine how many students you will be in front of every day next year. Some of you, 150 students a day? And there's 70-some teachers here, right? Do the math. Even if we go 70 teachers times 100 students every day, think about the power and the impact that you have each day. And you don't even have to blog about it. You just have to be present and try to make a difference. Help them through those 4 sometimes difficult years so that they come out of it feeling empowered and feeling ready to do something, and maybe one day to do something as honorable as being a language arts instructor. And the only thing better than that is a social studies instructor. But you chose your discipline, and you're stuck with it. There? All right, good. You can set the rope down or tie each other up, whatever you like to do. Yeah, there's a lot of relationship, isn't there? Would you mind getting the... Yeah, that would be great. Would you mind just sort of helping out a little bit? Would you mind passing a few of these around? Thank you. Would you mind passing a few of these? All right. All right. Oh, you get all the good ones. That's all right. All right, let's give you something practical, if you will. Something that you may be able to do. I hated grammar. It wasn't a lot of fun. It wasn't always the most engaging. Okay. But yet it was quite important. There you go. Does anyone still need one? All right. Are some of you still wondering about, where you want to start? You should be looking at Tweety Bird. You should be looking at Tweety Bird because that's where we're starting. We're starting there because I'm all powerful and mighty. And I decide where we're going to start. Right? As teachers, we decide. Others of you would like to start here. And something, it may be as simple as where is the staple? Because we have been educationally socialized to look at the world with the staple in the upper left. And because that's where I like it, that's where all my students should like it. Except for a woman that I taught with at St. Mary's Central High School. In fact, the guy standing over in the corner, sitting in the corner, is Rick Newman. He's the girls basketball coach from University of Mary. Student taught with me, coached with me at St. Mary's Central High School. And he, more than I, was under the microscope because his first teaching gig was with a legend, Judy Woodart. And that woman could flat out teach. And she knew world history. And when he showed up, because he was taking her job, because we knew that she wasn't going to survive her bout with cancer. In fact, she told us that in July, and she passed away in February, and she says, you need to get somebody hired, because I'm not going to finish the year. And the person who finished the year is sitting right there. He'd finished student teaching with me, and then he went on and got a real education with Judy. And Judy did not staple up in this corner. She stapled in the right top corner. And it reminds us, yeah. And if you're like a really weird guy at our school, he doesn't use staples. Because before he corrects his papers, he throws them in the microwave and hits them with some heat. He's a little obsessive compulsive about germs. People call him weird. We refer to him as Father Waltz. All right? And yes, he is weird. And I always like to throw out the fact that, if you want me to, I'll throw up too, but I always like to throw out the fact that our brains are much like these sheets of paper. We assume that they all open the same way and they're all motivated by the same things, but yet some of you are playing with a sheet right now that makes you feel just a wee bit uncomfortable. and you want to rip that staple out of that right corner, or the bottom, or the side, correct? And for some of our students, conformity doesn't always feel so good. Particularly when we should have a few students who should have these in their pockets. So that when they start to feel uncomfortable, they might be able to take something and squeeze it. If you want to see anxiety of a student, look at my 3rd grade son, who the minute he walks into a classroom, he'll start snapping his fingers quietly. He's looking for pressure points to make him feel comfortable because he doesn't feel comfortable in a classroom. Not sure if it's the classroom or the people around him or what he may be asked to do. So I said, Leighton, you need to put something in your pocket that you can squeeze. But then you always run the risk of being teased, right? Because you're doing something weird. Because we're all hiding something. We all have some fears. We all have things that make us feel uncomfortable. For some of you right now, it's the sheet of paper that's making you just feel a little bit uncomfortable. Now, some of you got a normal sheet of paper. Good for you. You're the chosen ones. Woohoo! School is easy for you, right? No. All right. If it makes you feel more comfortable, you can rip that staple out or you can swap with somebody. And then there's other people that can adapt really, really fast to a new staple. Okay? All right. Needing to feel comfortable. And if you look at Einstein up in front, because I always bring him with me, if you wanted to see a difficult student, there he was. Because not much that he did felt comfortable. And we're pretty certain that if we evaluated it today, he'd be somewhere on the spectrum. Because he could never remember a phone number, could never remember his address. And remember, I mean, he was the kid who walked around flapping his finger, you know. I won't do it for you because I do it, oh, what the hell, I'll do it, all right? And I'll make you just feel a little uncomfortable. Now, do you want to hang out with a kid who keeps doing this during school and recess? He's not going to have any friends, is he? Because he's freaking you out just a little bit. But he figured out why birds could fly when he was finally sent home in homeschool. And no one could put up with him except his mom. And I think his mama was even sick of him after a little while. But the guy could process information. But he had to find that correct modality, and maybe he needed to find a way to get turned on to his discipline. Story has it he did pretty well for himself. I mean, if you call like blowing things up good, right? He did pretty well for himself. An activity you can maybe want to start the year with. This is actually from a 2nd grade classroom, and it evolved into a high school classroom. You need correcting. There are classrooms that are correcting tweets. Do you know who wrote the first 3 tweets, the actual tweets? He's a Canadian. He's skinny. Bieber, the Beeb, was tweeting. And I don't know if some of you read the directions. Did you find them as spellings, or did your brains just jump right over them? You saw them. Yes, because you're an English teacher. And you wanted to take out your red pen, right?
This one would work.
This one would work, good. Or a yellow pen. Or I had a college professor who chose instead an orange pen. He was a psychology instructor who thought that we were already damaged with red. Heck, I liked red. It meant I was getting some attention. Okay, a lot of attention. So they're looking at some tweets, then I put an actual billboard up. And then a few more billboards. I like the chicken one. All right? But maybe there's some things our students could do that we can engage them right away. Let's turn to page 2. On the bottom of page 2, or on the top of page, it'll work. It's the same thing. one of my favorite philosophers who actually coached for many years at Princeton, who was a little different. He was 5'6", and he coached major college basketball, and he did it just a little different with a little different flair. But he wrote a book, The Smart Take from the Strong, which he got from his father. And he said there's 3 things that we do in basketball, and we should all do them all the time. It's dribble, pass, and shoot. And just keep it really, really simple. And when I was a basketball coach, I thought to myself, if those are the 3 things we do most often, then shouldn't we be practicing them 70, 80, 90% of the time? So I decided to call someone who's smart and strong in language arts, and I said, what's new? What did you do last year that worked for you? So I'm going to share those with you. Number 1. Smart idea number 1. Be an editor. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a week magazine. I like these in my classroom. And you can take these home with you. These are parting gifts that my students didn't get because the school year came to an end. But what I'd like you to do is this. No, throw some that way. Open up and find an article, any article, and let's do a little editing. Okay? But what I'd like you to look for is this. Need some back here. If you want to look with someone, he said that this worked very, very good at first in groups, or actually first individually, then they moved to groups. But what I'd like you to do is this. Did you find something that you might like to read? All right? Good. We've got that part of it down. Let's do this. Now that you've found it, put it on this. We won't take 10 or 15 minutes. But looking at the article, could you highlight some subordinate clauses or compound sentences? And if you need to, help each other, because Kenoto's starting to break out in a sweat up here, trying to remember what the heck again is a compound sentence. He knows what run-on sentences are because he edited my little briefing as to what I'm going to try to do. But that would be one thing that you could do. Have you found one yet? Very good. And then you could do something such as this. Review specific types of words to form a proper sentence, such as an adjective or an adverb, subject-verb agreement, proper use of punctuation, and he added one. He said, try to find some punctuation that you don't normally see. Some punctuation that you don't normally see. Find some examples of the proper use of commas or semicolons. And I think this one is awesome. The next one. Ideas for transitioning to a new paragraph. And they can steal from some of the best writers. Sentence construction or other things. What are some other things you might want to do with this activity? What might be another thing that you might do? What's that? Page layout. Good. What else? Quotation. Good. Sentence variety. Good. 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 Yeah. Word choice. Excellent. Point of view. Man, you guys are smart. And it's July. You know, shouldn't you be on a beach someplace, vacationing with your family? Instead, you're here. You 70 chosen. That's awesome. That's great. Okay. Now, I need a volunteer. And I would like you to share with us a tremendous book that I found in Minneapolis. Who would like to read a book? They're not real big words. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. Woo! Present to you a bouquet of flowers. Now, I would encourage you to do this one thing. As you go back to your schools, read to your kids. Read to them. Because it reminds them of something that is rather comforting. Story time. Remember, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade? Story time? There's some ritual, and that was the time where we're all quiet. No one was picking on me, right? Or picking on you. And you could just sort of chill out. I would encourage you to go back and talk to your elementary teachers and tell them to grade their students on listening to story time. That is the one thing that a student who's maybe getting N's and S's could get an E on. Because all they have to do is listen. It's a self-esteem boost. And then you can ask them simple questions afterwards. But if there's one thing, if you could go to your elementary people and say, just give them a grade on story time. This is my favorite book for the summer, followed by Bill O'Reilly's Killing Kennedy. This is a historic anniversary year as to his last year in Hyannisport, right? And I saw a picture of him wearing navigators. So I bought a pair of navigators. Yeah, they're pretty hot. So I wear them. My wife said I looked a little odd. But I don't really care, because every time I put these babies on, just for a little moment, just have a taste of Camelot, you know? It's pretty cool. So these work out pretty well. And then, based from someone from this very smart organization, I think this book was talked about, right? Unbroken. Fabulous. And what does Common Core tell us we should be reading more of? Nonfiction. Cool stuff. Very good answer. And you're on. Thank you.
You stood out from the very beginning.
Did you give the yeah. Oh yeah, and show them the front cover. And if you want, you can ooh and ah. And you see the title? Do you see that title?
No.
Exclamation point.
It's going to take a while. Okay, so it's called exclamation. As I read here, he stood out from the very beginning. He stood out here. He stood out there. It seemed like the only time he didn't stand out was when he was asleep. He tried everything to be more like that. But he just wasn't like everybody else. Period. He was confused, flummoxed, and deflated. He even thought about running away. Then, one day, hello? Who are you? The question. What grade are you in? What's your favorite color? Do you like frogs? What's your favorite ice cream? When's your birthday? Know any good jokes? Do you want to race to the corner? Is there an echo in here? What's your favorite movie? Do you know what makes gravity? Why do you look so surprised? Am I boring you? Do you think you could go around the world? So what do you want to do? Who's taller, you or me? What do you want to do when you grow up? Stop! He didn't know that he had it in him. How'd you do that? Can you do that again? He wasn't sure, so he started small. Hi. That felt right, so he tried something bigger. Howdy. And as he pushed himself a bit more, wow. He discovered a world of endless possibilities. Yippee, this is fun. Way to go. Bravo. It was like he broke free from a life sentence. You're it. Yes, home run. Cool. Yum. That's great. Thanks. Congratulations. Happy birthday. Encore. Go. Wake up. Look out. He couldn't wait to show everything. Hey guys, it's me. Look what I can do. Of course, there is much explaining. Isn't he something? There was never really any question in our mind. So, with his head held high, he went off to make his mark. The end.
The greatest book of the summer. My favorite read. Isn't this kind of what we all do? We try to find out our place in the world, and we're kind of afraid of making a splash or making a mark because we're not sure what that mark or what that splash should be. And then somewhere, some way, along the way, someone picks us up and helps us find that place. And we find our own voice. And we have the courage to stick out a little bit and to exclaim who we are, and maybe to call other people forward, to call them away from those things that they're afraid of, those fears, those anxieties, the things that have damaged them, and let them know that from time to time it's okay to stand alone in the world. Because by standing alone, they will call some people forward, and by standing alone, they may give hope to another person. And maybe it's that kid who's getting bullied, and maybe that's just to see some person say, no, please stop, don't do that. They say the two ways to stop kids from bullying are simply due to this, that someone has to find the courage to do one of two things. Put their hand out like this, which basically is signaling to the person, don't do that. Or to say, don't do that, I don't like it. I have a nephew, his name is Dale. And Dale, at 3 years old, told my very annoying brother-in-law, Elizabeth knows who it is. Who am I talking about? My most annoying brother-in-law. He teases a lot. Alex, yes. He teases a lot. And he was getting after Dale, who was 3 years old. And we're sitting down at this banquet table, and he kept saying, Dale the whale, there he blows. Dale the whale, there he blows. And Dale, a 3-year-old, said this, I don't like that very much, though. And it stopped. He stood up for himself. And the thing that I'm trying to do at our school now is I am the behavioral redirectionist, dealing with all discipline. It's a hell of a title, isn't it? I mean, who wants to be an ass principal, right? I'm a behavioral redirectionist, and I tell people that you are responsible for redirecting behavior that comes your way that is not appreciated. That was my goal last year. My goal this year is to help other people take the next step and help someone in their class. And I think they're doing it already, but it's sometimes as simple as putting their hand out and say, don't do that. Or, I don't like that very much, though. Which is going to be the title of a chapter in my book that I have to write before I'm 100. I have every chapter labeled, One is constipation. That is chapter 3. The leading cause of constipation in America, what is it? Schools. Because what I'd like to encourage you to do when we take a break in just a few minutes is to all walk to the bathroom together and poop and pee in front of each other. That's not a lot of fun, is it? We wonder why people are constipated. They're not going to do it. As my son said in first grade, I said, Leighton, you need to go when you have to go. But Dad, if it smells, they're going to tell me that it smells. And I don't like that kind of teasing. I was like, yeah, you're right. So if there's another thing you can go back and tell your elementary ed teachers, because in high school we're probably a little more lenient about letting people go, and we really shouldn't, because you know they conjure up all these ideas, and then you find them up on 3rd floor, right? Eating a Twinkie and a Pop-Tart. And they got lost somewhere along the way. But if we could somehow find out a convenient way for our students to relieve themselves, that's the topic of chapter 3, constipation. On that, let's take a short break. And I would like you to be in your chairs when you hear, let me think, how about some island music? All right? So if you want to go to the bar and get a DAC, no, I guess you can't do that. If after the show you want to go and get an DAC, that'd be fine. So let's take about 5 minutes. See you in a little bit. Island music, and it'll reconvene. Aaron, what time are we at?
You're going to see this?
You reminded me, I couldn't do that one this year. All right. That was awesome.
Oh, you deserve it.
Plus, I can put it on my website.
As part of your educational consulting firm.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I'ma get faded at the tiki bar tonight. And I'm going up like my name is Bob. Yeah, I'm gonna party like I'm a Jamaican. If you really wanna know where you can find me, I'll be unwinding. That's what I'm saying. Down in the islands, yeah, sure. Lose track of your timing.
Let's
Grab a drink beside me.
stand up. Let's check your rhythm, language arts. Here we go.
Down in the
You're talented, not quite like social studies people, but you're close.
pass me the rum. You found somebody who's the greatest to you wrong. Something you like to speak, then everybody dance with me. We got the ladies.
All right, keep it going. Let's see how close we are now. We'll just add a little.
To the left, fell to the right.
Aha! Yeah.
About a night, and we all have to dance to the rhythm of the waves. Now we drink
All right, quick story. That is my. That is compliments of my son, who put together a little summer mix that he thought that we could enjoy out on the beach. This is my third grade son who doesn't like school a whole lot because it makes him feel uncomfortable. But the kid loves his music. All right? So he put together a little Zach Brown, a little of his favorite Blake Shelton, CeeLo Green because he loves the voice. All right? And he was having some problems this year connecting with school. And his second grade teacher said, what could I do to get him interested? And I said, if you just say the word Blake Shelton, or if he walks into the classroom and he hears a Blake Shelton song, you will have a friend for life. So what is it that we have to find in our students to make them feel comfortable and that they can feel that they have someone they can confide in? It might be something as simple as giving them a sheet of paper and saying, please write down your favorite song. And then you load it on some form of technology called like an iPod or something like that. And as they enter, you can play a song from time to time. And if you know that they need a pick-me-up, you can do it. I won't give names or anything, but there was a player and a student of mine by the name of Jeff. And if you want to do the research, Jeff was a 2005 graduate. And he had from time to time was a bit temperamental. And we always called him the soldier on our basketball team because he was our enforcer. But he was also very temperamental. And there were a couple times where I could find that his emotions were not in line with where we needed to be at practice. And all we needed at that time was just a little Travis Tritt. It's a great day to be alive. And that kid's mood would change like that. Boom. And in fact, there was a time in the first half where he had 3 fouls and he wasn't doing so well. And I sent an assistant coach down. I said, Travis Tritt, get it going before any player hits the locker room. Because he's going to freak out. And he got down there and I saw a smile on his face. And when I was at his wedding a couple years later, they played that song like, 15 times. He's out there, going crazy, doing his deal. Rituals are really, really powerful, and I think we can find them in music. We can find them in flowers. We can find them in whatever it is. But there was something that our team always did is we always gathered around towel. Okay? And I may have shared some of this story with you. If I did, please nod. Have I shared the towel with you? All right. There's a great neurosurgeon that always said this. Logic does not change behavior. Rituals do. And I thought of all the logical, illogical things that we do when we know they're bad for us. Smoking, driving too fast, not wearing our seatbelts, whatever it might be. Spraying chemical on our lawns when we should be, clothed a little bit better. And for some reason, for my team, it was always a towel that we would gather around. And you could generally sense, grab on, which player was having a little problem with the way things were going based upon how they held the towel. Because if after a game or before a game they were doing one of these things, looking away from the towel, you could sense very quickly who it was. So can you create some rituals? And I think your classroom is very much like a team, that you can pull people together, and maybe it's a song, like we sang in first grade with Mrs. Merritt. Good night, everybody. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Stay well and happy. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, my darling. And then she'd get in the middle of all of us, and she was all 4'10". And she would always say, I love being your teacher. Wow. And that has stuck with me. And before my children go to sleep every night, I like to go into the rooms and I'll say, Grace, I love being your dad. And she's getting to that age now, and she's like, yeah. Ditto. And I'm like, what, you're a dad too? No. And there's my son, where he understands ritual really well. I'll stick my head into the door, and he's like, Dad, I love being your son. And I say, that's awesome. The rituals are very, very powerful. And they can bind us together. So what are the things that we do? In the month of November, in my social studies classes, we would talk about bread. And if any of you have not stopped by Bread Poets in Bismarck, this is like the greatest bread. And I would bring out bread in the month of November, and I would usually set it up by telling people if they have any fresh jellies or something like that their families make. And one kid brought honey that his uncle, he does bees. And we talked about the upper crust, which is highly symbolic, correct? Those are the folks on the Titanic that dressed up and rose, you know? Yeah, the upper crust. But the month of November would be reserved for bread. And we talked about when our ancestors came over, they ate what they had. Eggs, flour, milk. Noodles. That's what they had all the time, right? And it would get so sophisticated that people would start bringing other things like rolls and placenta and all these other things. And they would tell a little story about their family. And we'd share jellies. And we'd just stand around this middle table and we'd share some bread. And we learned a little bit about each other. And one student said, "We should do this in September." I go, yeah. But I always thought November was best because that's when I like sharing it. So if I'd have been teaching this year, I'd have done September. But I always thought with the traditions and the cultures, you know, around Christmas, you know, leading up to Christmas, and go home and ask your family about Christmas traditions and bring some food. And I would bring my mom's pig's feet. And they're like, so gross, you know. And I'd pay them dollars to eat a bite of it. When my mom passed, I called my brother Joe in South Dakota. I said, I need like a quart of it. Can you come up with it? Yeah, I got it. And he delivered it. And I took it to my students and said, here you go, it's pig's feet. And a few tried it. But we also talked about why did we pickle everything? Because it was a preservative, right? And you couldn't waste anything. So we have these creative things in German called Schwaldemaler. Head cheese. From the pig, you saved everything. And what you didn't have, right? You made soap out of it and stuff like that. And slowly but surely, I think our students start finding out about where they came from and how difficult it was. And when they started reading about stories about their families and traditions and where they came from, and they start finding some things that they haven't even realized was a tradition and that they hold on to it. Okay? So what are those things that we hold on to, some traditions? And with that, you can have a real fun on plays. The play of words, the upper crust, Saved by the Bell, You know, bringing home the bacon. And I have some examples there, and if you want them, just email them to me. Email them and I'll send you a sheet of paper. I was going to do some of them with you today. Other than that, I will share one, because I just love this song. Maybe you'll recognize it. Maybe you won't. But this is a song that means a lot to me. You know what it is? But you don't want to tell me, do you? I was at a wedding dance about 2 years ago, and the band played this song, and everyone like 35 and younger was like, ah! Hit the floor, you know, because they all had a crush on somebody, you know. And I heard one of my cousins saying, Zach Morris was the hottest thing ever. Saved by the Bell. What they found out in Britain when they were running short of places to bury people, they would dig up the remains and take them other places. And what they realized that inside caskets 1 in 25 there was scratching, which meant they knew they were burying some people alive. So they had a great idea. In colonial America, what they did is there were people in America that would rob graves. And what do we call those folks? Grave robbery, yeah, grave robbery. I never knew what that was, and I found out when I was in Annapolis, Maryland. And the same thing, they would dig into these graves and they'd find things. So they had this great idea. They would put someone in the cemetery every night. And when they would bury someone around their wrist, they would put a string. That string would go up to the casket, through the dirt, and if they woke up and started moving, the man would yell, "Dead ringer! Dead ringer!" And they would dig out, and if they saved the person's life, they were saved by the bell. They were saved by the bell. Okay. I have a very, very brief article that I placed on your table. And it is an article about somebody in North Dakota who interested me in the Titanic. And you see him on the bottom of page 10. Okay? Now, rumor is this handsome man inherited, and for those of you that came from, you know, the mega city of West Fargo or somewhere like that, you may have passed by a little town, Chaffee, right? Really? Do you know the story behind it? It's awesome. You have to read this article. And what I was going to do if we would have had some time was, if we were going to sit down and do a close read, that we could share some ideas, and maybe you could do it over like, I don't know, sodas tonight or something. You could all bring your articles and say, let's come up with some questions. But here we had one of the most affluent bonanza farmers in the area who somehow got on the Titanic, and there's a bunch of theories as to why he was there. Some say he went to Europe to buy stained glass windows for the church. There's other people that said he went there to take care of a deal that went bad by his son. There's other folks that he was just exploring. But when I read this article, I got really, really geeked about the Titanic. And it happened to be the 100th anniversary. And the most amazing part of the Titanic for me was a man by the name of Wallace Hartley. Now, what that picture on the bottom of page 10 could also be considered a non-linguistic representation, which is discussed on page 9. right before that, I think. Yeah, there we go. Now, non-linguistics are anything that are visual, anything that is not written. And I found that when I taught history, it worked really good in my classroom if I just put their picture on there, like, boom, there's Edgar Hoover. And we'd write notes right across the face, and they could draw notes and boogers, mustaches, whatever they wanted to do. And come test time, you flash the pictures on the exam also, next to their names, and boom. I had students that at the beginning of the year didn't do so well, but now we had the non-linguistics. So I tried it with my class this year on the Titanic, and I just gave them a picture of the Titanic, and I gave them facts. And I did this in my third period class. I used the non-linguistic, and we wrote on there how many passengers. 2,223. Some say it's 2,224. What was the cost of it? And some say that Chaffee was on there because there were some friends in Britain that gave him a ticket, he and his wife, as a gift. But what I found out in period 3 versus period 6 I did not give the non-linguistic. I just gave facts. It didn't connect as well. And when we quizzed, I had a few students that even drew the ship. So what can we use for non-linguistics? Okay? So for me, I used the Titanic this year, and it worked really, really well. In the beginning of this article, it talks about Carrie, the wife of this very giving, popular man who knew he was probably going to die that night, as he told her that he gave her $30 and said, "You'll have to wait somewhere and I'll come and find you, but just in case we become disconnected." And it was shortly after 11 o'clock, because that's when the band stopped playing. Wallace Hartley's job was to find other musicians that I think they had to be able to play 362 songs from this one book. So people would come up and request a song, they'd play it. And they would stop playing every night at 11 o'clock. And if you watch the show Titanic, there were a couple places they would play. They would play in the ballroom, they would play up on top of the deck. At 11 o'clock, they closed all their music. They closed their instruments. And shortly before midnight, many people heard a thud. Now, these guys who were playing on the Titanic could have been the first people off, because they were considered the upper crust. Everyone loved them, everyone respected them, they could play songs. And Wallace Hartley and his players started playing in certain areas because the story goes that he said that music is the most powerful weapon in the world, and that it brings calm. And a weapon does not always have to bring destruction, but it can bring calm and it can bring peace. And these guys knew that there would be chaos. So they played music. And first they started with, some airy music, then some ragtime, and eventually somewhere after that first hour and 15 minutes, they started playing sacred ritual music, and they brought calm. And Wallace's last words to his men, paraphrased, go something like this: "Gentlemen, it's been a privilege playing with you this evening." They did not find the bodies of all the men who played. But the work has become legendary because they used their tools. They used their God-given talents, And they brought peace and they brought calm to the people on the Titanic. People who were rich, upper crust, and those people who were poor, like Jack, who somehow inspired this beautiful girl by the name of Rose to take a chance, to be different, to do something a little crazy. Music is a universal language, and I believe words are universal, because all you have to do is throw them at an app and they'll put them there for you in any language you want. What you teach, the tools you have, are universal. Don't neglect music, if you can, because that touched me when I was a language arts student. And I had my own Titanic moment about 2 years ago when my mother was passing away. And we would sing to her. And we would pray with her. And we'd sing some more. And as she looked into my sister's eyes, Danita, who cries at everything, she said, just sing. It is Danita's God-given talent. And she could not complete a sentence whenever she entered the hospital room, but she could get down next to my mother's bed and hold her hand and sing 5 verses of any sacred song she could think of. And it brought all of us calm. And hopefully it took some pain away from my mother. And we sang her into the next world. And it was the anniversary of the Titanic. So I've been trying to get my hands on everything possible that Wallace Hartley did. And there was a letter that they found of his. And I thought I would put a bid on it. They brought like $143,000. You know, I thought if it went for like $105, I could go after it, you know. You guys are going to be in front of some students this year, and they might feel a little bit like they're on the Titanic. Sometimes very, very excited, sometimes maybe a little scared. Our jobs as educators are to provide calm and to inspire them so that maybe they will have the guts to get up in front of the boat. You know the scene, right? By the way, that took some inspiration to do that. All right? Not the most manly thing to do. But to trust us, to take them to some places that they've never been. That the discipline can move them, and that they can find something that they relate to. And for you to do that, you're going to have to be courageous. And my suggestion is to try to be 10% better than you were last year, the first 21 days. That's not a whole lot. To be 10% better than last year. And to be nice. And to speak a universal language, which will make the difference. And the universal language that we all have is making eye contact as students enter our rooms, and maybe shaking their hands, or just saying something nice, or giving a pleasant nod, or playing It's a Great Day to Be Alive, or whatever it might be. We teach content, but before we teach content, we teach life. And I think our students are on a tremendous voyage, because what will their world look like when they're old like me and their life is halfway completed? And what will they be dreaming about doing? And will they come to visit me when I'm going to be telling my stories about the times when I was sad, the times that I was happy, or the times that I was even honored? And for those of you that had any impact on that achievement award. That's very, very meaningful, and that's something I'd like to go home and share with my kids one day. Because they know that from time to time I leave home and I go and present. And my children just don't believe that I have anything to share. You know, because I'm dad. And my daughter said, Dad, what do you talk about? And I said, I talk about the brain and how we can make school interesting. And she said, couldn't they just read a book? And I knew at that point that my work was valued. It always takes kids to bring us back down to life, and your students will bring you back down to life. But keep at it, be courageous, make a difference in their lives, as Mr. Zeman did to me. Play music, have so much fun with it, do something a little crazy, play some music that your students are listening to when they come into your classroom. Maybe you want them to have them corrected grammatically, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, you could even have them write verses about a song, about a story, like this rich man who was a bonanza farmer. And you can put that, you can pick the music and have them write verses. And then you take 12% of the royalties, right? All right. It has been an honor being here with you guys again today. Your organization is very inspiring because there's not many people, at least in social studies, that get together in July who, talk books and drink tea, eat cheese and stuff like that. That's amazing. Us social studies people, it's like a Coors Light, Maybe some chips and dip. You guys are like cultured. You are upper crust. I love it. I wish you well the next day. And I will say again this. You have a very important profession. It is one of the most honorable professions in the world. And if you don't believe me, go and talk to some of your students. 15 and 20 years, 5 years after they left their classroom. And I hope that from time to time, they write you or say, you meant something to me. But maybe what we have to do is model that and put those messages on the bottom of their paper and say, I can't wait to see what you will create before you're 40 years old. Keep inspiring them. And thank you for inspiring your students, because not only will they make your hometown in North Dakota better, but the places where your children will go, it's truly amazing. So God bless. Enjoy the rest of your conference. I will now push some product. If anyone likes some cranberry jelly, this is marvelous.